Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We are extremely excited to have with us a celebrity event planning master, André Wells, joining us to share some of his tips for, well, actually the three elements of an A-list fundraiser. We're really glad that you could join us here today for this presentation. It shouldn't last longer than about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for a short Q&A session so you guys can ask Andre some of those questions yourself. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'd like to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ian Loth. I'm the VP of fundraising here at Winspire. Love doing these webinars to share actionable advice for you all out there in the field who are working so hard to raise money at these event fundraisers. And I'd like to welcome André Wells, the owner and founder of Events by Andre. Welcome.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Hello, everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited to hear. Andre and I have been working on this presentation in the last couple of weeks, and he has some just great advice on kind of the whole flow of an event and how you really impress those A-list VIP donors that you try so hard to get to come to your event and support your cause. Just real quick, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Winspire, what we do is we put together incredible travel packages for your live and silent auction and also raffles. It's completely no risk. It doesn't cost you anything to use, no upfront cost to use in your event, and then you only purchase the trips that sell and actually raise money at your event. So to date, we've raised just shy of $55 million for nonprofits. We've been in over 48,000 events globally in Canada, North America, and elsewhere. And we've helped serve over 91,500 winning bidders, and that number is climbing every day. We love taking care of your VIP donors, whisking them away on an adventure and just making them very happy about purchasing those trips at your auction and helping you raise money. And as far as how it works, it's very, very simple. It's no risk because it's free to reserve for your fundraising event. Again, no upfront cost. You can sell any one of our packages as many times as you can. It's a really great way to really amplify the amount that you raise per package. And then you keep all proceeds above the nonprofit cost. There's no hidden fees. The prices that you see on our website are the prices that you pay after your event. And again, only those packages that actually sell and raise money. It's just a great way to have a big wow experience and really round out, especially your live auction offering. So often, you know, the live auction, you get those first 3 to 4 items donated, but you want a couple more to really round it out and get people excited, right? Use it to promote your event and get people to raise those bid paddles. So that's really where we come into play, and I'm just so excited to be a part of the nonprofit, event fundraising community. Today, here's the overview of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to start by making sure that you are asking the right questions about both your audience and about your event before you begin the planning stages. I'm sure maybe some of you have your events coming up here in the fall in October, November, or maybe you're planning for next spring, but there's definitely some questions that you can be asking right now. Then we're going to go into the 3 elements. There's the conceptualization of the event, the implementation of the event, and then the actual event day, night of event production. And then we're going to finish off with some of the top selling auction items of 2018. Before we get into it, I always love to start these things with a little bit of audience interaction to see what you guys are doing out there, and also gives us a sense for what your events are looking like. We can kind of frame what we're going to talk about today, and that's going to start with a question for you about how many people do you typically have at your annual gala, your signature event, your biggest event of the year. So I'm going to launch this poll here. You'll see it come up on your screen. How many people do you have? Is it between 0 to 100 guests, between 100 to 250, 250 to 500, 500 to 750, or are you one of the big ones, the 750 plus guests? Go ahead and submit your vote now, or rather your answer right now. We have almost everyone in. I'll give you just another few seconds. 3, 2, and 1. All right, great. So yeah, I would say this is really average. We have a majority of our folks who are right in that 100 to 250 guest range. That's a very typical event size. Some of the bigger events in there as well. What do you think about this, Andre?
I think that's great. I think that that's pretty average. You know, most galas are anywhere from 200 to 300 guests. So we're flowing very good here.
Awesome. I love it. Great. I'm going to hide this poll and I'm going to go to the next question. This has to do with your live auction. How many auction items do you typically include in your live auction? I'm going to launch it so you can see it. Is it 0? You don't have a live auction, which is just fine. Maybe you just have a silent auction. Do you include 1 to 4 items, 5 to 7, 8 to 11, or are you one of those events that has a ton of live auction items, 12 or more? I've heard of events that have 30 or more auction items, but let us know where you're at as far as your event is concerned. Looks like pretty much everyone's voted. So I'm going to share the results. All right. Okay, so we have a healthy number of events who don't have a live auction, which is just fine. We're going to talk a little bit about the live auction today, and then conversely, it's kind of both ends of the spectrum here. You either have none or you have a lot, right? Which is just fine. What do you think about this, Andre?
I think that's interesting. You know, live auctions are special. So, you know, most do have silent auctions. So I love how this poll is running, but maybe we can, toward the end, convince the planners to convince their clients that they should be doing live auctions. They really bring a lot of dollar and value if they're right.
Absolutely, I would totally agree with you. I mean, live auction live auctions are just another revenue stream, right? And when you remove it from an event, you're basically taking money off the table, right? That could otherwise be there. You want to make sure when you structure your event, you have multiple revenue streams, right? And so having both the silent auction and a live auction and a direct appeal are kind of the 3 main pillars, right? You have your other things like ticket sales and sponsorships, which are also huge. You have your games, your raffles. All are really crucial aspects to having multiple revenue streams so that there's ample opportunity for people to give and contribute to your cause. So I totally agree. I think the live auction is an important component. Maybe today we can talk a little bit more about why. All right, I'm going to hide these and we're going to move on. I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to hear from Andre about his history and why he got into events, and in particular how he landed in the nonprofit fundraising world. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Andre?
Well, hello, everyone. Again, thank you for joining. I'm glad to be able to have an opportunity to speak to you all. I love events. I've always loved special events. So when I went to college, I knew I wanted to be a special event planner. I have a firm that's based in Washington, D.C. We design and coordinate political, social, corporate events, and also some high profile weddings. And our sweet spot is galas. We do probably on the average about 12 or so fundraising galas a year. And it's just become our sweet spot. I love it because it's an opportunity to meet a lot of people. We work across industries from uh, nonprofits to corporations, and people want to introduce items. We also try to introduce galas to our nonprofit clients as a revenue streamer and a way to raise funds. So I'm excited. I have had the company now for 15 years. And again, we are based in Washington, but we do probably 60% of our business throughout the United States and abroad.
Very cool. I love it. And what makes nonprofit events your sweet spot?
You know, that's interesting because I think we focus on nonprofit events because we like and being based in Washington. There's a lot of nonprofits based here, so
Mhm.
you know, actually, it was a smart way to start a business. Um, and also, there's so many organizations and associations that are based here, and
Mhm.
they do fundraising events. So we just kind of fell into it, and then we really just polished it up.
Love it. I love it. And aren't you, so you do the events for the, isn't it the African American History Museum? That's kind of one of the more recent Smithsonian's over there in DC.
Yeah, we have an opportunity to do events at all of the museums. We've done
Okay.
quite a few at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, but we do events throughout the area and at a lot of the other Smithsonian run museums.
Love it. I was just in DC last, I was actually a year ago now, but we got to do that. Such an incredible museum there. So very impressive, I guess, career and history as an event planner. So I'm sure we got some great information for you to share with everyone today. Um, Thank you again for joining us, Andre. And I
Yeah.
wanted to, yeah, I wanted to start by with just the questions to ask yourself about your event. So let's go ahead and just get straight into it. For those of you, we want to hear from you as far as questions are concerned. So there should be a little questions pane over on the right side. We're not going to answer them during the webinar, but we will have a Q&A at the very end. So if a question comes to mind, please don't hesitate to put it there, and we'll get to it. Speaking of questions, right? So let's go ahead and move forward. First question that you talked about is, what is your event story? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think you need to decide, what is it? What are you trying to convey to your audience? Creating the story. Is it an after work event? Is it a black tie event? Should the event be interactive? Does it need a speaker? Um, how do we pull all of this together? How do you produce a successful fundraising gala? Who are the key players? Who are the people that you want to reach? Uh, what are, which is in part of my next question, but basically, what are the goals of the event? So creating a story. Is it best to do this in the fall? Is it best to do this in the winter or spring? Is this the first? Is this an annual? Is this a biannual? Uh, Asking yourself all of these questions and making sure that you're in tune with your client and the organization or company that they represent. So first, we have to create the story.
Yep, love that. And as far as, so these are questions that are way before the maybe the planning of the event. These are kind of high level questions. And then do you kind of establish them? Do you tell your clients to write them down and make sure that everyone kind of knows? Is there some way that you communicate this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you always have to have a meeting with an initial meeting with your client. I think you need to research the organization. You need to research its donors. You need to research who you think would be potential donors, and also it'd be very helpful for you to get their idea of who would be helpful to their organization. I think you need all of this to even begin. And
Got it.
the most you know how do you produce a successful fundraising gala? you
Hmm.
know what are all of the elements you need? How
Hmm.
do you create that story to create a successful gala?
I love it. I love it. And it's all about, yeah, setting kind of the strategy first, and then the tactics, the steps that you need to get there. I think that's really important to set the big picture. And then and a big part of that, right, is setting goals. Talk to us a little bit about, and knowing that our audience are the event planners, so you would be basically advising them on what goals should they be setting.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. So many people plan events and they really don't know the goals of the event, and which I
Mm.
think is so important, because you need to know that to even be able to begin to start. So you need to make sure it's clearly defined. Make sure your client understands and you understand, and we're all on one accord. What are the goals of the events? Are you trying to introduce the event to new donors? um, which is great. You know, are you trying to maintain the donors that you already have? Is this a capital campaign? Is this a financial goal for down the road? Is this a special goal for the year? Is it an anniversary goal? You know, and then creating and designing the gala that composes the energy of whatever the target is. So what I mean by that is if you're introducing this to new donors, how do we cultivate these relationships? How do you cultivate relationships? Is it lead up events? Are you doing lead up events to make sure that you are being able to have an audience present? Are you making sure that there is an interest in the actual gala and the organization? And then what about maintaining the donors that already exist? You know, so many times, and especially a lot of philanthropic individuals, um, they try to spread the wealth around a little bit, and they try to, you know, spread the gift. And then you have some philanthropic individuals and corporations who really support one cause, but sometimes they get burnt out or bored. So we always need to think of ways and look at ways to maintain them, and also to change things a little bit, but keep them interested, and find out from them what things that work, things that they like, things that they don't like. And then, you know, capital campaigns, those are always big and sometimes need to be introduced, uh, you know, from putting associations or companies in new buildings, or giving big gifts.
Right.
Uh, you know, so you have all of those kind of things to really think about. And lastly, what I was saying is creating and designing the gala that composes the energy of whatever the target is. If my target is to introduce and cultivate new relationships, I want to make sure that I have a ton of lead up events. I want to make sure that I have um, literature that's up to date and reflects the organization and its goals, and where they're trying to be. And then I want to also make sure and coordinate a lot of communication between the organization and the donor.
I love it. I think one really important, I apologize, folks. It looks like I wasn't sharing the slides fully. So now you should be able to see the slide that what are the goals. But yeah, I think such an important piece of having an event is to have something specific that you're trying to raise money for, right? Like if it's like you said, a new building, if it's a new, heart machine, or if it's a new something
Or
specific.
if there are scholarships, if you're trying
Right.
to in scholarships.
Right, right. Exactly. Having something specific is such an important piece, because that gives people an anchor to kind of mentally associate where their money is going to go. Let's talk a little bit next about, because I love how you're talking about is this new or maintaining donors. How do you approach, identifying the target audience?
How do you identify your target audience? That's so key. Um, well, first of all, you have to know again what the organization is, how it's run. Hopefully, at this point, or if not, if this is in its infancy stage, um, you create measures. Most organizations and associations and companies, they send out literature about the organization. They have websites. They have social media pages. So you want to gather as much information about people who are interested in your organization already. So you want to make sure you have that. That's easy, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and then you want to think about who is in a line with that organization. So if it's, you know, for example, if it's the Children's Hospital, you know, what companies have an interest in the well-being of children, from associations that have doctors and nurses to uh, to organizations or people that provide services for the hospital. And then also, just from a history of giving, what philanthropic individuals do you know who contribute to those kind of organizations? So that's who your key target audience is. Who's going to give the dollars to make whatever uh, the organization needs to work or maintain? Who's going to contribute to the education of the organization? Who's going to contribute to the existence of the organization? Those are all people who make up the key target audience.
I
So,
totally, I 100% agree, and I think much of it has to do with networking, right? As the event planner out there, right? I mean, a great place to start is with your board, right? And you find out, okay, who's your board connected with? You're looking for business leaders, you're looking for civic leaders, you're looking for business owners in the
yeah,
community, trying to find out who cares about your cause and enrolling them to become part of your community, because that's what events are all about, right? Is making them feel like they're part of something, part of
absolutely. You need to
something
let
that
them
exists
know,
around.
yeah,
Yeah,
and letting your new donors and your key target audience know um, about the vision of the company and where you're going, where you are, where you want to be, and just really celebrating the vision, you know?
love it. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what we have next, like about cultivating those people. So, how do you go about if you can identify first, who the people are in your community that you want to enroll, then how do you go about cultivating them?
Okay, this is one of my favorites, cultivating relationships. I mean, cultivating relationships isn't an easy thing and it doesn't happen overnight. But again, you can invite them, you can have a luncheon, a preamble luncheon to really just an informational luncheon to talk about the organization, talk about the goals of the organization and where you want to go, and invite and identify these people who meet closely with the goals that you're trying to achieve. They'll love that. A luncheon, they'll get to meet invite the board, invite the people that are affected by the organization. I always say, you have this is an audience that you have, and you have their specific attention for a little while, and you want to make sure while you have it, you not only captivate them, but you also educate them. Um, think about companies and products that engage the community. Um, people who have excelled in their field, people who are influencers in the community, people who are leaders in the community. All of this cultivation, you know, give your chair of the gala or those key principal people involved list so that they can write letters and send them from the organization. A personal note is always such a great touch. And that's how you cultivate. And you follow up with phone calls and you keep in touch and you keep them educated on the organization and the goals and the progress.
That's great. I think that's really important. I mean, that's the name of the game, right?
Yeah.
Cultivating relationships with VIP donors and events is the best avenue to do that because you get FaceTime, right? And you create a party, you have a great time. So much has to go into making sure you identify and get those people there. But then once they are, making sure that you know exactly where the right people are sitting and who the relationship is, where the relationships exist so that you can go and introduce yourself
And
as a development director or executive director to try to get them to not just come to the event and have a good time, but also become a recurring donor in the long term.
yeah.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about conceptualization. So this, on the timeline scale, this is a ways out, right? We talked about creating the story and identifying your audience. Those are kind of key parts of this as well. But wanted to get into some of the specifics about event planning when you go about, in the early stages of conceptualizing your event. So let's go ahead and start with venue considerations. I know this is a big part of what you do and help your clients with.
Yeah, so just to let the audience know, I feel like there are phases. And today we're going to talk about 3 phases. Basically, conceptualization is phase 1, implementation is phase 2, and the third is just on-site management and post-event support. But, venue consideration is very important. This is very important to the success of any event, because you have to make sure that the venue is the right venue. I mean, the location matters, the type, the ease of working with the venue, the ease of, I always say you have to look at this from a guest standpoint, and then you also have to look at it from an organizational standpoint. Um, you know, do you need to be in the round? Does this need to be theater style? Is it a seated dinner? Will this work if we transition from cocktails to dinner? Is it an easy transition? If I need to go and, speaking of cultivate a few special people like my VIPs, is there an area that I could take them to where no one else sees, so it doesn't look or appear as we're being elitist, but basically just cultivating this? And then there's there a place that we all can meet? So all of these questions and all of these things really matter about the venue. Is this gala or event starting at 6 p.m.? Is it downtown? Is it going to be right in the middle of traffic, or is this venue kind of removed? Do people need time to get there? Uh, all of that matters. And also cost of the venue. Um, are you going to have a performance? Will this venue be able to hold all of the items and all of the elements that you need for the performance? So venue is very important. That's the first thing that you have to make sure, venue consideration. Go ahead, Ian.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think that's important. And then it's about, once you've selected the venue, then you start about the communication, right?
Yeah. So again, the communication is so important. I think that it is the success of any event. Um, you have to make sure, and we always start with, the organization. Who are going to be our touch point people, or who are going to be our leads on the event?
Mm-hmm.
Who do we need to make sure that we work with as it relates to communications? And
Right. And you talked a lot about just the communication between leadership and committee members, right? Making sure that everyone is on the same page in the very beginning and establishing a plan for communication moving forward. Because I think, well, in the events that I've been a part of, the things where things start to break down is where communication breaks down, where there wasn't an established plan for, okay, what is the leadership responsible for, what is the committee members responsible for, and then how often are we going to be communicating on this stuff, and how are we going to be doing it?
yeah, you have to do that. And also, when you do that, you realize there are so many synergies. There are people. Ian may know person at X organization, I know a person at Y organization, maybe we can tag team. There may be some history within the organization where they can't approach certain people and you don't know that, so you don't want to make those kind of faux pas. You just want to be very clear, and you want to develop a plan, a clear plan on how you will tag team, how you will communicate the goals of the organization, the fundraising elements, who's going to handle the logistics on site, etc. I mean, from contract negotiations, materials and activations, logistics, seating. You would just want to make sure you have a really good communication plan.
That's great. And I think it all starts with a planning meeting, right? Making sure
Yes.
that you're meeting with leadership, defining those goals. Maybe you can speak really quickly about this meeting that you usually schedule.
Yeah, that's always scheduled in the beginning, and it's usually, a couple different times because there's so much to go over. You want to talk about, really, with the leadership, defining the goals, as I keep saying. All of the mandatory event elements. Again, if something happened that was really successful in the event that happened last year or the year before, you want to talk about continuing that. You want to talk about things that didn't work out, things that you want to change, and then also just brainstorming, different concepts and objectives. We talked about in the beginning. It seems like it was a few people that incorporate live auctions. So maybe you talk to your clients at this meeting about really having a live auction, and starting out baby steps, starting out with 2 or 3 items to start and seeing how they do. But basically, in this meeting, you just want to be very clear with the leadership uh, and your clients about the goals, and make sure you have monthly meetings and update them weekly on the progress of the events, on the progress of the revenue that's coming in, and how far you have to go, where you are, and if you're going to exceed the goals.
Love it. Love it. This is such a crucial part, having just a weekly meeting and have an agenda that you go through, and it's just all about keeping that lines of communication open. And I know that you talked a lot about this too, Andre, about establishing that event plan or the action plan. We talked already a little bit about the theme, the concept, the story, but actually putting that down in writing, something that can is easily accessible by everyone, all the stakeholders involved, the committee members. Hopefully you already have this in terms of an auction binder or something that has happened in previous years.
Very important.
But so often I see it's in different places, right? The piece of information, making sure it's all in one place.
Yeah, make sure it's all in one place. Make sure that your client has it, and then you use this as the blueprint. You can use this as the blueprint for next year. Just really making sure that you have all of the different elements that contribute or will contribute to the success of this event. It's just like your action plan, booked venue, have the budget in there, have invoices in there, have needs in there, a green room request and riders, etc. So just making sure that you have a plan, and it will take you all the way through from start to finish. As I like to say, from conception to conclusion.
That's great.
Yeah.
This is something I know you talked about, that's really crucial, and I think it might be overlooked by some, important to others. But tell us a little bit about your perspective on event branding.
Well, again, it's about captivating your audience, making them excited. So we always like to start off with what's going to be the icon of the event, because for the next 7 months while you're planning this event, or 12 months or 2 months, however, wherever you are in the beginning of the process, you want to brand your gala or your event. You want to make sure when people see that, they know, oh yeah, that's that. And this starts from the very first piece of literature to the wall. When you get to the event, you see it. And so make sure you hire a good graphic artist, a good graphic designer, or a stationery warehouse, whomever you work with, to create a brand. And also you want to create a brand that's memorable and that will last, and that the client will be proud of, and they will want to continue to use. Because so many of us, I think, because we do lots of events and we're always trying to look at new ways to improve or change things, but some things don't need to be changed, and some things you want to make sure that are continuous and people look forward to. So event branding is very important.
That's good, and good place to go. That there's plenty of logo sites that you can go out there and pay for. 99 Designs is one, I think, but hopefully you have someone that maybe has a little bit of an artistic talent that can help you design it.
Sure.
And if you invest in it 1 year, just plan on using it for the next 3 years, right? And then only update it every 3.
And you can always add to it. It
Yeah.
may, there you have your icon, and then maybe it's a tagline if it's
Right.
so.
Yep. I love it. We're going to be moving through the slides a little quicker here because we got a lot to get to. But why don't you tell us a little bit about the guest list?
Okay, the guest list again. That's your that is one of my favorite things to do. Creating a guest list. Think about the guest list. Create a wish list of your high profile guest. Who, if you could have anyone that you would want to come and to be present. Make sure that when you're thinking about the guest list, also think about the sponsors. Who are the corporate sponsors that you want to be involved? Who do you feel would work really? What organizations do you feel will work, or companies will work really good with this group? This is your time too to introduce this to other people. So if they don't come on board this year, maybe they'll come on board next year. What about government officials for solicitation? We all live in a city, so that's a great place to start. The mayor, get them involved. The mayor's office, the city of wherever you are. Um, Very good because they can be great cheerleaders for you throughout this process. And then you just want to make sure that you identify the attendees throughout this invitation process, because what you're also doing is you're building a mailing list, you're building a guest list for other events that's going to take place throughout the year, etc. And then you also want to make sure that you, with the guest list, mail out save the dates or solicitation letters. So you're gathering all of this information and you're building all of this information for or from the guest list for solicitation, for save the dates, and just for people that you want to introduce the organization or gala to.
That's great.
So
I think it's really
guest list
important.
is very, very important.
That's great, Andre. I think those are some good tips. Let's move into the implementation a little bit closer to the event. This is 2 to 6 months prior, and now we're getting to the nitty gritty of okay. Now we're getting into the event season, making sure that you are, getting some of the real important tactics up. And I love how you talked about reporting because it's such a crucial part of making sure that your event is successful year in and year out because you're looking at the right metrics, right?
Yes, yes. So reporting, developing a fundraising report or a revenue report, that's very important and that's great to share with your client, because by providing this, they know where they are. They know where they need to be, um, and they can see it. When people see it in black and white, they get it. So that's very, very important. Um, and then, like I said, providing a status or a weekly report. I think sometimes, as we all know, when we're working with clients, if you don't reach out to them or talk to them, sometimes they feel like, oh, what's going on? We haven't heard from you. So you want to make sure you stay in continuous contact. I know that we all get in our little shell and we're working, but sometimes we don't communicate as much as we should with our client. So I always find it very important to make sure I'm in constant communication with them, and even if it's once a week call, um, just saying, "Hey, these are ABC. We did these things this week, and we're working on X for next week." I think that's appreciated. So just making sure that you keep excellent, and that's the difference between a good and a bad event planner. A good event planner keeps excellent records. um, they're able to go back and tell you who gave, who from the organization gave, when they gave, the date that they gave, how much they gave, and the reason why they
Mhm.
gave what they gave. And
That's
you want
great.
to make sure you need that information, because next year you'll say, hey, well, company X gave $25,000 and they were really excited and happy with everything. And when we talked, they said, maybe, we could uh, go up again next year. So you want to make sure that you have that information and you're armed with that information. And then you can go to company X and say, hey, You know, we want to see if we can get you to 30,000. We really need it, you know, dot, dot, dot.
That's great. Yeah, these days the reporting, especially if you're using mobile bidding technology like One Cause, for example, or Greater Giving or Gesture, they have all this baked in. You're not using Excel sheets to try to go back and find manual records. You can manage your donors and figure out how much they're bidding, how much they're spending at these events, and it just saves so much time. So I highly recommend moving to kind of a more technology based approach with your events.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about procurement. We talked about the live auction earlier. I know that procurement is tough. It's one of the tougher parts about putting together a fundraising event. It's something that we work with nonprofits a lot because we want nonprofits to get things procured and donated. But of course, it doesn't always pan out. You don't always get as many items as you want, and you still want those big marquee items. That's really where, Winspire travel packages come in. But what sort of tips do you have, Andre, as far as going out and procuring good items for the live auction or the silent auction during your events?
So I think procurement, you really need to work on, as soon as you get the contract, because you want to make sure the things that you're procuring make sense to the success of your gala and the organization. So if it's to engage a company like Winspire, I think is great because they have a proven track record, and also you're going to get the items. So I think also for us is we always engage the executive committee and the board because they work so closely with the organization. Hey, are there items? Are there things that you want to see? Do you have some solicitors that we're able to approach about procurement? And then also just really researching companies who specialize in auction items, and it's so important. And their track record and what happens after the auction is over. And what if you're very successful and all of the items are gone, but if you're not so successful and they're still there, what's the processes, and understanding the processes.
Yeah, I would say too. I mean, so I just got back from Raise in Chicago, which was put on by One Cause, and it was a bunch of event planners, and we talked a lot about, what's kind of the trends in terms of live and silent auction, and definitely there's a lot more people who are taking less time, focusing less on the silent auction, right, and focusing more on the live auction fund a need, and because it ends up, in terms of the amount of time that it takes to put together items for the live auction versus the silent auction. You can imagine if you have over 100 items, it just takes so much time for your committee to package and bundle and market and put together the display materials and do all these various things for not but each item maybe will net $100 or a couple $100 versus the live auction. If you are strategic about finding out what your major key stakeholders in the room want in terms of where they want to go, what they want to do, putting together really cool, unique experiences locally in your community with sports teams or celebrities or great restaurants, doing a date night package. Those are the kind of things, or getting a local celebrity chef to come and do a 10-person dinner at your home, right? Those are the things that are going to net you thousands of dollars, right? And all it takes is one approach, to a restaurant and really framing it and saying, hey, here's what we're trying to put together, putting a vision in their mind and being specific with your ask is really where it comes down to, having a much higher return on your investment in terms of time. If you can put together some really cool live auction items. Now, of course, it doesn't always work out like that's what I said. That's why consignment comes into play, because you can still have those really cool marquee items. But still, you're going to get people who, our average return on our packages is 40%. So if you have, a $3,000 package, you're probably going to make over, $1,200 to $1,500 just on that package. And all you have to do is reserve it and put it in your event, publish it on social media. And that's another huge part about, these live auction items. when you're procuring them, as it's leading up to your event, make sure that you're promoting them on social media. Send them out, post them on social media. Say, hey, look at this incredible item that we just got. Include them in your invitations or a program or things like that, so people know to expect these items by the time they get to the event. And then talk maybe real quick, and that we got to keep moving. We only have 15 minutes, and there's a whole nother section we want to get to here, Andre. Talk real briefly about some of the event elements, some of the vendors that you always work with. If there's just a few things you could recommend.
Of course, you want to make sure that again, for me, it's all about relationships. I work with people who I know are going to do a good job, who not only going to do a good job, they're going to look out for me, and I'm going to look out for them. There's so many talented vendors out here, and you can't work with everyone. So I think it's the key is working with people that understand your aesthetic, they understand your business practices, they understand your client and who they are, and they really get it. So people think about setup. If you have a short setup time, who can go in there and who can put it together and make sure it happens. And then also innovative. Who's going to be innovative? Because I want to work with these partners throughout my time creating and planning these events. So I don't want to keep going to different vendors. I want to make sure that they're giving us something really exciting and something that's new and interesting. Just want to make sure that you're in tune with that. And you want to make sure also that you have dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's, whether if it's at a museum and you need valet and they need permits, making sure they've gotten the permits, or if it's a big load in and you need extra days, making sure you've negotiated that time. If there's a separate room where you're doing a silent auction and you need tables and spaces, making sure that you can do that. And maybe it's not a table. Maybe some vendor has, these bar height kind of tables that work well with hundreds of people moving through a busy area, and the items are visible, they can see, and at eye length. And so really thinking about all of the event elements. If you're doing a live auction, do you want to do that in the middle, the beginning, or the end? Will that work with the catering schedule? Will that work with the speaking program? So really just thinking of all of those different event elements as it relates to the success of your event, and making sure that you're compiling good quotes, and not only just compiling the quotes from your event vendors, but really reviewing them and making it all make sense.
That's great. So true. And talk real quick. I love what you said about making sure that you are strategic about where you put people, and making sure that people know exactly where the right people are sitting. And we kind of already touched on this, but being strategic, right? You kind of have like.
Yeah, this is the purpose of the event, because you're trying to raise money usually. So you want to make sure that you are sitting the right people by the right people. So if you're inviting a person that is the big philanthropic person in the community, you want to make sure that they're by the chair of the chair of the organization, so that they're able to talk. Or maybe it's when they arrive, you're introducing them. Seating is very important in this as well for the success of any kind of gala. Seating, placement, I always say we always tag team too, because there's an event production team, and then there's also a strategy team. The strategy team is helping the client, making sure that the client is also helping to raise money, and they can focus on raising the money for the event, and they're able to usher these potential donors and sponsors throughout. Because also you got to make sure you cultivate. We keep talking about cultivating. You want to make sure for your sponsors and people that give, you're treating them well, and making sure they have a wonderful experience, so they'll be able to repeat and do this again.
That's good. And I would recommend putting the most important people up near the stage, up close. You don't want to spread them out too much. So keep them
But
congregated.
not by a speaker though. Sometimes again, it's
Yeah,
very,
true.
think about where you're putting people. If
Good.
someone you need to talk to, and I think also spreading your committee and people that work within the organization throughout the space, because you don't want to get into good or bad seating. You want to
That's
make
right.
sure every seat is a good seat.
Totally. Talk real quick, just invitations. I know that you just spoke. Make sure you mail it the old way. I've seen some that have you do it by email. Maybe just
Yeah.
talk real quick about invitations.
Yeah. So invitations, just make sure I I love an invitation. It sets the tone of any event. And I'm old school like that. I think that it's important that people get something in their hand they can touch and feel. Of course, we live in a very, electronic world, and it's fine to send out an email invitation, but people who you're really going after, you want to make sure they get something in the mail the old-fashioned way, and they understand, hey, this is really important. I think your invitation should be appealing. It should be very well done and precise. Make sure you have someone that's able to proofread to make sure there are no mistakes. Because if I just gave an organization $60,000 and my name is spelled wrong and my company's name is spelled wrong or misrepresented, I'm going to be really irritated. And you'd be surprised, and especially in this fundraising world and in the gala world, little mistakes like that could cost you big. You get
Totally.
people that are irritated, they don't come back, etc. Um, and then also, it gives you an excuse to call a client. Hey, did you get the invitation we mailed you? I'm so looking forward to coming and following up. And a big thing that I love to do is the importance of a thank you note. Even if a person did not give the organization anything, but they came to your event, it's very important to send them a thank you note, because again, it goes back to what we started talking about at first. It's about cultivating the relationships. So that goes a long way, and people are usually really grateful and thankful for that.
That's really important. Thank you. Notes are huge. Talking quickly about production. This is the final weeks and night of. We talked about the seating, making sure it's dead on, but I wanted to skip ahead a little bit about to table visits and then the program, then the live auction, and then we'll move along to questions here in really shortly. So tell us a little bit about making sure you have accurate seating for the table visits.
Yeah, so I always think it's very important to take the leadership around to each table. You want to make sure, just thinking about it when you entertain at home, you want to make people feel comfortable and welcomed and make sure they had a great time. So you also always want to take the leadership around. So it's very, very important that you have accurate seating, or if people have moved, which this happens at events. We all are event professionals, but we know how the real world works. Somebody didn't show up at the last minute. You can't have that table empty. So you got to make sure that you're just keeping great records. And that's another assignment for someone within your own organization, to make sure that they are aware of the seating, and then have a seating chart so guests know where they are going. They're not just wandering all over the room. It's so important.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to make sure that it's dead on. This is the biggest novice mistake. If you have a stage in the front, or if there is a table that's better than the other in your mind or opinion, make sure that if it's a sponsor or whomever, you make sure you get that, give them that. And also, I always talk about influencers. There are some people that really talk and they influence things. They may not give to the organization, they may just be a friend of the organization, but you want to make sure they're in a great space and they had a great time, so they can be a big cheerleader for you and the organization and go out and tell the story. So seating is key, and you can put people by, you can place people at different tables based on just the research and history that you know about them and what you hope that they'll provide for the organization.
Makes sense. Yeah, so the gala program, I think is something people ask about a lot. We have a free auction catalog template that you can download at winspireme.com/resources. That includes your auction items, where to put sponsors, the whole bit. But tell us real quick about the live auction, and then we'll get to questions here.
Yes. So the Gala program, I mean, I think this is key because we like using Gala programs as tools. I mean, for me, it's a great networking tool. You can go through the list and see who all the sponsors were. You can see the people that work at the organization. You can go back and look at all of the items that were for auction, things that worked or didn't. So, the next year, the following year, or even when you're working on some other event, it's good to have that because it's a tool. And also, people love something that they can pick up and hold and refer back to. And it also acts as a advertisement for the organization because there's information about how to get in contact. You can put flyers or postcards of information that you want to gather, or information about the organization. So gala programs, very important. I think every gala should have a gala program,
Okay,
period.
great.
Yeah.
Love it. Making your appeal, it's such a key part, right? Making sure you show the success of your organization. I know we talked a little bit about the importance of the live auction and the appeal, but just making sure your speeches are short and to the point. I actually prefer videos to speeches. What do you think? Speeches or
Yeah,
videos?
I do too. I think we live in a very fast, instant gratification world. People's attention spans are short these days, and you need to be concise, you need to be precise, and you need to be very targeted. So, making your appeal, you have a captive audience. They're all yours, but you only have them for a certain period of time. So make sure that you make the best use of your time and their time, and really make sure you're dead on in your presentation. And it goes for no lengthy speakers, no lengthy speeches. People don't want to hear that. They want to learn about the organization. So that's great in video. They want to hear from you a personal appeal. And I also say, if this benefits someone or it's done something for them, use them, put them up there, because that's always a winner, always a winner.
I think that's great. Live auction. This is just, we touched on this earlier. Just make sure you keep it under 30 minutes. That's the attention span of these folks. If you have a professional benefit auctioneer, you can usually get items, get through an item one each 3 minutes. So an item every 3 minutes, in which case you can usually pop in there, I would say like 7 to 8, maybe 9, maximum of 10 items. But it's really crucial. If you're doing less than that, if you're only doing 3 to 4 items, you could be leaving money on the table. The important part is just to make sure that the items you put out there are matched to your donor interests. So asking the right questions of your donors and then catering your experiences to them. I want to kind of just jump through here just so that we can get to Q&As, just because we've been we're running short on time. You talked about post-event follow-ups. Make sure that it's a handwritten thank you note, especially for your biggest donors, and a phone call, right? I think that's such a crucial part of making sure that donors feel acknowledged and like they contributed to the event. Did you want to add anything here, Andre?
No, I think you hit the targets there.
Cool.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, let me just real quick share just some of the top selling items of 2018 in terms of the live auction. These are some of the packages that are selling the best for us, as far as the Tuscany Culinary Escape, which is always a top seller. Ireland Adventure, there's also a Game of Thrones package that we do that sells really, really well. Hamilton, Chicago is huge. Napa Valley is always a popular one, especially if you're on the East Coast. Sending people to Napa Valley is just incredible. And then the tropics, right? Who doesn't want to go to the tropics? If you want to see these and other packages, you can go to winspireme.com. Again, it's no upfront cost to use these packages in your event, and you keep everything above the nonprofit cost. We also have some hotel only packages that we offer that you can use in your silent auction. They have a lower price point and are great for just throwing out there on the silent auction table. So you can also find those at winspireme.com. Here's just a showcase of 6 of them. We have plenty more, and it's from Preferred Hotels and Resorts, which is a boutique hotel brand. We'd love to help you out with rounding out your auction offering, and you can find those at winspireme.com/silent auction. With that, I really want to thank André for coming out and sharing his infinite wisdom when it comes to events. So thank you so much, André.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, this is great.
Awesome. And I wanted to get to some of the questions here. This is if you have any questions, now's a great time to ask in the questions pane. This one's from Tori Brown. One of the main goals of our event is to make sure everyone in the room, new, old, doesn't leave without knowing who we are and what we do. Any hints on best ways to do this? Is showing a video the best way? What are some things? And I think that's a great question, Tori. Like I would split this into 2, right? Before the event and at the event, what do you recommend doing there, André?
Yeah, definitely showing a video. I think a great video about the organization that's no longer than 2 or possibly 3 minutes max, that really outlines who the organization is, what they do, and what they've accomplished over the last year.
I think that's great. Yeah, videos are very impactful. But I would make sure it's in all of your communication leading up to the event as well. What are you trying to accomplish? In the beginning, we talked about having a specific cause in mind. What's your story? Include that in the invitation, include it in your follow-ups, include it when you're posting auction items on social media. Make sure that you have a specific metric, right? This is key, a specific metric that is really simple, right? For every $10 we raise, 5 meals get produced, or for every $100 we raise, we can plant 8 trees or something like that, so that it becomes real for people and they understand the mission and keep it simple. Do you agree with that, André?
Oh yes, people like that too. It's very targeted and they can see it. People like when they feel like, if I gave $5,000, this goes to the success of a summer camp for one student. People like when they have targeted, measured gives. So absolutely.
And share stories, right? Stories are
Yeah.
key. Have a picture of someone who is affected. Show what you are able to accomplish. The reason
have
behind the event.
Have ambassadors walking around your event throughout the cocktail reception.
That's great.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Great question, Tori Brown. Thank you for that. This one's from Miriam Lacey. How do we break the ice to get heavy hitters to the event? How do we get people who can donate money instead of just filling the seats with passionate people but no free income? I think that's a great question, Miriam. I would suggest making sure that you have table captains and that are recruiting on your behalf, right? Instead of just, the last thing you want is a sponsor to buy a table and then put the tickets out in the coffee room and anyone can go, right? You want to be very explicit about your ask to these sponsors and tell them who you're looking for them to bring to the event and how you plan on enrolling them in your cause. What do you think?
Yeah, and also that's one of the things that you can do as a planner, and we talked about this, just suggesting lead up events and having people have preliminary events and intro and kickoff events, because that gets and brings all of the excitement for the event, and then people really want to come. And I call them preambles, they're lead up, and you'd be surprised how they work. They work really well.
That's great. Yeah, we just got that conference I mentioned, the One Cause conference. We had Lynn Page from JDRF, who I've had on one of these webinars before, and she talks about the same thing, these cultivation events where you have at somebody's house, right? And you bring them out and you have maybe a researcher or somebody who can share some of the progress that you've made over the years, or a board member or director who's sharing how the cause is progressing, so they feel like their money is making a difference. And those are the kind of events that you can have them bring their friends who might be interested in getting involved. And then so by the time, and that's also a great time to get those pre-secured gifts for the things like the fund a need. If they're going to be asking for a $10,000 donation, you want to make sure that someone's going to be raising their hand at that $10,000 mark. And so these pre-cultivation cultivation events like Andre's talking about is just a great place to make that ask and make sure that you're getting the right people at the event.
Yeah, and make sure also, let me say this, Ian, to put markers in the audience. Do your preliminary homework. Make sure you put Susie at table 6 that you know that wants that trip, and she's going to bid on it, because those are the drivers. They drive the auction up. They drive the numbers, and they're pointed spotters. So you want to make sure you have some idea before you even go into the night, making sure who's interested in bidding on what and where you should sit them and seat them. That also goes back to, again, that direct place seating.
That's great. Totally agree. Thanks for that, Miriam. This one's from Sasha Austin. I had to step away for a moment. And mess with the conversation about the presentation. Yes, it will be emailed to you. We will send this recording out after this is all said and done. So look for that in your email inbox. If not this afternoon, then sometime over the weekend. Another question from Miriam. What's an invite to government officials look like? Well, that's an interesting question. Is that any different than nonprofits?
Yes, Miriam, that's good. And you have to really think, because we live in Washington, so there are certain rules for congressional members and other elected officials, and they vary by state. So just, you can Google and make sure, because there have to be certain limitations on food and beverage. They can't buy or accept donations, donated tickets for certain things. So it varies by state. So it's a very good question, and you can just research that on the internet.
Okay, great. And then last question, this one's also from Miriam. Love it, Miriam. We do a golf tournament, then happy hour and dinner auction. How do I get people to stay after a full day of golf, or do I try to pitch this as 2 events, going and then dinner auction as separate?
So repeat that, Ian.
So she has a golf tournament, then a happy hour and a dinner auction, which that's a big day. How do I get people to stay after a full day of golf?
Yeah, I think that you should maybe try to do the golf on another day.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that you may have another stream of income too. I mean, because then some other people may come and they may bring other people with them. So if I were you, I would suggest doing that, because again, I think it goes back to the attention span of people, and especially after playing 18 holes of golf, it's a pretty long day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 100% agree. I would try splitting those events out and having a separate golf event and a separate gala dinner auction, and maybe splitting them up by a good month, because different people, you're looking for different people for those 2 events, right? The people who are interested in golf, or people who might be interested in coming to a gala may not be interested in golf. So you can target different people with the 2 events. That's great. And one last question. Oh, Watkins Jackson, I plan a golf tournament as well, and we had the same format, but for our 2019 golf tournament, I'm foregoing the dinner. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think a golf tournament should be a golf tournament. You can definitely have some auction items there, like set up on tables and such. But if you're going to do a dinner gala, I would separate that out as a different event entirely. And any last minute thoughts there, Andre?
Yeah, no, I would too. I just think that you have a whole nother target audience there. And I've been to those kind of events, and I think to myself, and you can see those guys there, or women, they're coming to play golf, and they're not really interested in a lot of, you know, auction items, et cetera. It may be nice, but I think if you divided those events up, you go much further.
Love it. Love it. Let's see, Miriam. I love it. We're having like a live Q&A session here. Let's see, Miriam. How do we raise money while golfing? Oh, that's a totally separate webinar that we can talk all about. There's actually, if you go to our YouTube channel, you search for Winspire golf tournaments. We have a webinar up there that's all about how to raise good money on using golf tournaments. So if you Google Winspire golf tournament, there should be a webinar there that will hopefully give you more information there, Miriam, on how to effectively do that. unless there's any other questions, I think we're going to call it there. Again, I really want to thank André for coming out and joining us today. Just a few other really quick announcements. Please subscribe to our blog, Winspire News. We're giving away a $1,000 travel package, and you can go to winspireme.com/giveaway. We also have an Events with Benefits podcast where we're going to be interviewing André as well and releasing that. So make sure that you search for wherever you get your podcast, Events with Benefits, or you can go to eventswithbenefits.com. Again, I really just want to thank André so much for coming out. Would you be willing to accept, like if people wanted to call you for kind of or email you for an event consultation, is there something that you would be willing to offer?
Yeah, absolutely. Please give us a call. I think my number is there on the screen. Follow us on Instagram at Events André Wells. And I would love to help whomever I can. It'd be my pleasure.
Awesome, André. Well, thank you so much again for coming out and sharing your knowledge today. We will have more free webinars just like this one coming up in the months to come. So please stay tuned. And again, André, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Ian.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care now.